Every trip to the deli counter feels like a small luxury. The bright lights, the glass cases, the promise of something quick, savory, and comforting. But here's the unsettling truth. Every slice, every tray, every neatly folded strip could be a loaded dice roll you didn't even know you were making. Because deli meat isn't just about flavor. It's about bacteria that laughs at your fridge, outbreaks that blindside grocery stores, and recalls that sound more like crime scene reports than food safety notices. And let's start with the imposter that loves to pretend it's bacon. Oscar Mayer turkey bacon. You see it on shelves, stacked high, wrapped in that familiar Kraft Heinz packaging. It looks like bacon, smells like bacon, even sizzles enough to fool your senses. But when you peel it back, you're not getting neat strips of pork belly. What you're looking at is a carefully engineered sheet of turkey odds and ends. Ground, emulsified, restructured with water, sugar, phosphates, nitrites, stabilizers, and those label-scaring ingredients like sodium diacetate. Now, those additives aren't there just to spook health nuts. They're there to fight a monster that can quietly grow where you least expect it. Listeria monocytogenes, a bacteria so stubborn it survives refrigeration like it's on vacation. A bacteria that, in the wrong body, can kill. Here's where it gets ugly. Just this past summer, Kraft Heinz pulled over 368,000 pounds of Oscar Mayer turkey bacon off shelves. Not as a precautionary maybe, not as a minor slap on the wrist. No, this was a Class 1 recall. That's federal code for serious risk of illness or death. Why? Possible Listeria contamination in products made between late April and mid-June. No illnesses reported yet, but possible is not the word you want hovering over your breakfast plate, especially if you're pregnant over 65 or have a weakened immune system. Listeria doesn't need a dramatic failure to slip through. All it takes is one slicer in the plant not fully taken apart and sanitized. Picture microscopic meat residue tucked into a screw head, waiting. One new batch runs across that blade and boom, it's smeared onto every slice, every package, every shopping cart, and it's not a one-off. Just months earlier, the CDC closed an investigation into deli-sliced meats that left 61 people sick, 60 hospitalized, and 10 dead. Different products, same signature. A contamination that traces back to the same Achilles heel, the slicer. But here's what you're not told on the label. Turkey bacon sits squarely in what microbiologists call the moist-cooked meat zone. Translation? Prime real estate for bacteria, plenty of water, neutral pH, a sealed package that feels safe but acts like a slow-growth incubator. Yes, refrigeration slows Listeria down, but it doesn't stop it. And if your fridge is coasting at 42 degrees instead of the safe 37 to 38, congratulations, you've just given it a growth advantage. So how do you dodge this invisible threat? The rules aren't glamorous, but they matter. Keep unopened packs cold. Once opened, the clock is ticking. 3 to 5 days before risk skyrockets. And if anyone in your home is in a high-risk group, treat it like raw meat. Heat it until it steams, 165 degrees Fahrenheit, every single time. Think about how differently you'd shop if that warning was plastered across the front. Must reheat to kill deadly bacteria? But instead, it sits quietly in USDA recall notices, not on your grocery aisle. This is why a product once tossed into carts without a second thought now deserves the same scrutiny as raw chicken. Always check the use-by date. Scan that USDA inspection mark for the plant number. Because as history keeps reminding us, even the most processed, most preserved deli meat is only as safe as the last person who touched it. Now you might be wondering, are we overreacting here? Or is turkey bacon a total scam hiding behind clever branding and chemical scaffolding? Drop your thoughts, because I want to hear which camp you're in, and don't walk away yet. Because if you think turkey bacon is the biggest offender, just wait until we crack open what's really hiding inside that premium deli bologna. Spoiler alert, the label might say top shelf, but the reality? It's enough to shut down entire deli counters. If you want more hard truths that no one else is telling you, hit that subscribe button for Undercover Spoon. We're just getting started, and trust me, you'll want to see how deep this rabbit hole goes. Bologna. For some people, it's pure nostalgia. For others, it's the cold cut they swore off years ago. Either way, the name alone has this aura of being cheap lunch meat. But when you slap a boar's head label on it, suddenly it feels premium. The brand sells itself as the crown jewel of the deli counter, the choice for shoppers who don't mind paying more because they think they're buying better. But peel back the branding, and you're staring at a pale, rubbery disc that folds like a damp playing card. This isn't some carefully carved roast. It's a Frankenstein creation of meat trim, fat, and paste. All of it blended with seasonings, curing salts, and preservatives, stuffed into casings, cooked, and chilled until it holds its shape. On paper, that might sound refined. In reality, it's the same gamble you'd get with any bargain bin bologna, just in fancier wrapping. And recently, that gamble turned deadly serious. In late July 2024, Boar's Head was forced into one of the largest deli meat recalls in recent memory. Millions of pounds of their ready-to-eat meats, including bologna, were yanked off shelves after labs in Maryland cracked open an unopened package of their liverwurst and found it crawling with Listeria monocytogenes. The recall wasn't just a precaution. Every confirmed patient linked to this outbreak ended up in the hospital. 10 people died. That's not a better safe than sorry move. That's an active health crisis traced back to a brand that markets itself as elite. The USDA's recall list from that week read more like a hit list. Garlic bologna, lower sodium bologna, classic beef bologna. All of them flagged if they came off the Jarrett, Virginia production line. The Defense Logistics Agency's recall database, the one that supplies institutions and the military, looked like a grocery order for a nightmare. And here's where it gets even darker. The contamination wasn't subtle. Federal inspectors found condensation dripping from the ceiling onto uncovered product. They swabbed pallet jacks and found them testing positive for Listeria in areas that should have been sterile. Workers were bouncing between production lines without changing gloves or gear. That isn't an accident. That's a contamination highway. And when we're talking about bologna, the stakes couldn't be higher. Listeria thrives in high-protein, moisture-rich environments. Bologna is basically a dream apartment for bacteria, cozy, wet, packed with nutrients, and stored cold enough to slow growth, but never to stop it. The CDC doesn't sugarcoat the risk. If you're pregnant, over 65, or immunocompromised, their advice is blunt. Avoid cold deli meats entirely or heat them until they're steaming hot, 165 degrees Fahrenheit minimum. Because here's the thing, when a slicer is contaminated, every single slice becomes a Trojan horse. Some chains took this so seriously during the recall that they didn't just sanitize equipment. They shut down entire deli counters, stripped slicers to the bolts, and scrubbed like they were doing crime scene cleanup. And yet, for all that, many consumers never heard a word. The story wasn't splashed across headlines. It trickled out through USDA notices and scattered local reports. Meanwhile, Boar's Head packaging still whispered premium choice, while hiding the fact that some products were being tied to deaths. Here's another bitter detail. That lower sodium version people buy as a healthier alternative? One slice still packs around 360 milligrams of sodium. Double it for a sandwich, then stack cheese, bread, and condiments, and suddenly your better choice has blown through nearly half your recommended daily sodium intake. Premium price, premium risks, and not nearly as healthy as the marketing makes it seem. And that's the irony. Listeria doesn't care if your bologna came in a budget pack or a gold-stamped wrapper. It doesn't care if you spent $2 or $10. Once it's in, it doesn't discriminate. Your loyalty to a brand won't save you from a pathogen that kills 1 in 5 people it infects. So, is Boar's Head bologna really worth the splurge? Or are we just buying a more expensive illusion? Be honest. If the packaging didn't say Boar's Head, would you still feel good about eating it? Because the deeper we go into the deli counter, the clearer the pattern becomes. It's not just about what's inside the package. It's about every step it took to get there. And the next stop on this journey? A product that looks like it was flown straight from the rolling hills of Italy. Marbled, red, rustic. The kind of slice that makes a charcuterie board look like art. But behind that glossy sheen, the same bacteria, the same failures, and the same deadly risk. And trust me, you won't want to miss this one. Stick around because the closer we get to the gourmet labels, the scarier the truth actually gets. Picture this. You're at the deli counter eyeing those slices of deep red marbled capicola. It looks rustic, artisanal, like it belongs on a hillside picnic in southern Italy. Shimmering fat ribbons, speckled spices, the kind of meat that makes a charcuterie board look gourmet. But behind that glossy, romantic image, you've got one of the trickiest, most vulnerable products in the entire deli case. Capicola, or kappa, depending on the label, comes in two basic forms, dry-cured or cooked. The dry-cured versions are drenched in salt, rubbed with spices, sometimes given a dose of sodium nitrite for that rosy color, and then hung to dry for weeks. The idea is simple: moisture drains out, salt keeps bacteria at bay, and you're left with a safe, shelf-stable delicacy. The cooked versions, meanwhile, swap curing salts for vinegar-based antimicrobials and get a heat treatment before packaging. Sounds airtight, right? Except here's the catch. Once that meat is cured or cooked, it's only as safe as the very last step it touches. One contaminated blade, one drip of condensation, one worker moving from one station to another without swapping gloves, and you've got a pathogen hitching a free ride. And Listeria? This is the one bacteria that doesn't care about cold. It laughs at refrigeration, shrugs at salt, and will slowly multiply on your charcuterie tray without ever changing the taste or smell. The CDC estimates Listeria kills about 260 Americans every single year, and the majority of them are pregnant people, older adults, or those with weakened immune systems. And it's not just theoretical. In early 2024, Fratelli Beretta USA had to recall capicola products across multiple labels, including one sold under Dietz & Watson, because they couldn't guarantee the meat had been fully processed to kill salmonella. Think about that. Not cross-contamination, not a slicer issue, literally uncertainty over whether the core process itself was lethal enough. That's like getting on an airplane and finding out the pilot isn't sure if they fueled the plane properly. Maybe it'll make it, maybe it won't. Do you still board? And it doesn't stop there. Even when the plant nails the curing process, problems pop up downstream. USDA rules require slicers to be torn down and sanitized every 4 hours. Sounds good in theory. But in practice, many aren't. One damp corner on the blade, one hidden gasket, and Listeria can live there for months. Every pass of a new product just spreads the contamination further. And then come the label tricks. You'll see uncured plastered across the packaging in big rustic fonts, only to find celery powder, basically a natural nitrite, listed in fine print. Natural branding with no mention of how the animals were raised. It's all designed to sell an old-world illusion while covering up the fact that you're buying a product entirely dependent on perfection in a process where even the smallest slip can trigger a nationwide recall. And if you think dry-cured is safer, wait until you hear about the pre-packaged samplers. The ones that line the holiday aisles every December, decked out in gold lettering, promising variety packs of prosciutto, soppressata, capicola, and salami. They're Instagram bait, perfect for party trays, no fuss, no slicing. But in January 2024, a Minnesota lab cracked open an unopened Busseto brand sampler and found salmonella inside. Not traces, not maybe. Enough to trigger an immediate federal recall. Over 11,000 pounds of product yanked from shelves, all tied to lot code L0753. Best Buy, April 27th, 2024. Here's the part that'll stop you in your tracks. Salmonella isn't supposed to survive in meats like this. The entire selling point of dry curing is that salt, airflow, and time make it inhospitable. But the system only works if nothing goes wrong after slicing. A dirty blade, a sloppy pack line, a truck sitting too long on a loading dock. Suddenly all those traditional safety nets mean nothing. And this wasn't just a one-off. Within 2 weeks, USDA issued a wider public health alert on additional Fratelli Beretta charcuterie products while they chased the source. By February, the recall had ballooned. This wasn't just about one bad batch. It was a systemic failure somewhere in the supply chain. And the worst part? You, as the shopper, can't see any of it. You don't see how recently the slicer was cleaned. You don't see if that truck sat warm in the sun. You don't see the invisible bacteria multiplying at 40 degrees Fahrenheit in your fridge. All you see is a shiny tray in the cooler with rustic fonts and maybe a bow. That's why the CDC is so blunt. If you're pregnant, older, or have a compromised immune system, you should reheat all deli meats to 165 degrees Fahrenheit before eating. That's the only surefire way to kill Listeria. But who's microwaving prosciutto or capicola before a party? Exactly. Almost no one. So the next time you pick up a charcuterie sampler, check the USDA establishment number near the inspection mark. That number tells you which plant actually produced it. And it may not match the brand name on the front. And if you see puffed plastic packaging, slimy edges, or an odd rainbow sheen on the slices, toss it. Don't hesitate. Because if salmonella can survive in salt-packed, low-moisture meats like these, the question becomes, what happens when we move on to the fully cooked, moisture-heavy deli classics? The ones sitting in your fridge right now. And spoiler, what comes next is even more disturbing. You probably have one sitting in your fridge right now. A fully cooked deli classic that looks innocent, even comforting. Maybe it's ham salad in a plastic tub. Maybe it's a neatly wrapped ham for sandwiches. Maybe it's one of those antipasto trays that seem perfect for last-minute entertaining. But here's the part no one wants to admit. These moisture-heavy deli foods are the ideal hiding place for deadly hitchhikers. Let's start with something that feels almost laughably harmless. Ham salad. Just chopped ham, mayo, pickles, a little seasoning, right? Not so fast. In July 2025, Reese's Fine Foods issued a public health alert after inspectors found Listeria contamination linked back to a single ingredient: breadcrumbs. Yes, breadcrumbs. A minor filler ingredient became the weak link that compromised the entire product. No illnesses were reported, but the message was clear: one contaminated component, and the whole tub is trash. Why so risky? Because ham salad is what food safety experts call post-lethality exposed. Translation: the meat was cooked and safe, but then it was cooled and handled again in open air during mixing and packaging. Every conveyor belt, every mixing paddle, every scoop at the deli counter is a chance for bacteria to jump in. And once Listeria is there, the fridge doesn't kill it, it just slows it down. The bacteria multiplies silently, with no change in smell or taste, until your innocent ham salad becomes a bacterial cocktail. And preservatives don't save you. Reese's tries to hold back microbial growth with potassium sorbate, sodium benzoate, sodium diacetate, even a bacterial protein called nisin. But here's the ugly truth. Those additives don't kill Listeria, they just delay the inevitable. One contaminated ingredient, one dirty spoon, and the bacteria wins. Now zoom out to the bigger picture. The deli counter itself. Ever noticed how the same gloved hand that slices cheese sometimes scoops into ham salad? Or how the slicer goes from turkey to roast beef without a full teardown? Those shortcuts are an open invitation. Listeria thrives in hidden seams, damp corners, and microscopic scratches on slicer blades. Once it's established, it can live there for months. Every slice becomes a Trojan horse, and you'll never see it coming. That brings us to the classic centerpiece meat, Virginia ham. Sweet, smoky, glazed, often stacked high on sandwiches. But here's the kicker. Even when fully cooked, ham is still vulnerable. During one investigation, the CDC found that slicers, not the meat itself, were the villain. Hidden gaskets, seams, and screws on poorly cleaned slicers were spreading Listeria onto every new cut of ham. You might see deli workers wipe a blade with a rag between orders, but unless that machine is stripped down and sanitized every 4 hours, it's basically a petri dish disguised as a convenience. And the kicker? We don't always know what happens after slicing. Some companies invest in extra safeguards like high-pressure processing or antimicrobial sprays to reduce contamination risk. Others don't. Unless the company publicly discloses its practices, you're left guessing whether your ham is a clean bet or just dressed up in brown sugar and cherry glaze to mask a dangerous reality. Now let's turn to the showstopper, antipasto trays. You've seen them, Gran Barretta, Bussetto, or Aldi's Appleton Farms selections. Rows of prosciutto, salami, capicola, soppressata, packaged in glossy plastic with rustic fonts. Perfect for charcuterie boards, no effort required. But behind the premium vibe, these trays have been ground zero for multiple recalls. In January 2024, Costco shoppers were warned not to eat certain Gran Barretta twin packs after salmonella was found. Weeks later, a public health alert extended the warning to more of their antipasto products. And then came a second blow: under-processed capicola. Translation? The curing process may not have actually killed the pathogens. Not cross-contamination, straight-up unfinished work. Think about that for a second. You buy an antipasto tray because it feels safe and convenient. What you don't see is the microscopic grooves on the slicer blade that never got sanitized. You don't see whether the shipment sat in a warm truck for hours. You don't see if condensation dripped on the packaging at the plant. But all of those unseen steps can mean the difference between a safe snack and a hospital stay. Here's the brutal reality. Listeria kills 1 in 5 people it infects. It doesn't care if your meat was cheap bologna or imported prosciutto. It doesn't care if your label said natural or artisanal. Once it's there, it doesn't stop until it's steaming at 165 degrees Fahrenheit or someone gets sick. And almost nobody reheats cold cuts or charcuterie trays before eating. So, what's the takeaway? If you're healthy, you might gamble and never notice. But if you're pregnant, over 65, or immunocompromised, the CDC's advice is blunt. Skip cold deli meats entirely or reheat them until steaming. And for everyone else, at least check the recall lists, pay attention to plant codes, and don't trust a shiny wrapper to tell the whole story. Because the pattern is clear. From turkey bacon to bologna to charcuterie samplers, the deli case is less about better brands and more about better luck. And if you want to keep digging into the secrets your grocery store doesn't want you to know, hit subscribe to Undercover Spoon. Because as today's recalls prove, the dangers aren't just lurking in your fridge. They're hiding in plain sight, waiting for the next slice.